Dustin Poirier is a black belt.
Something. That black
But he is. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, bro.
Please, brother.
What do you mean,
You
please?
saw what he did when he catch his arm? He go to the do. What is this, brother?
Granby roll.
Black belt? Who give him, brother? We have to check that moment. And we have to cancel, brother, many black belt because
Why?
they make the jiu-jitsu, look bad. Because a lot of guys have black belt, but I don't know, bro.
But if they're standing tall, straight up next to each other. Yeah, dude. Like, how tall does it rate him to be, Ferreira?
6'8".
6'8", geez, man.
I mean, yeah, he's fucking
You see
wide.
some of these guys in boxing that are like real tall, but in MMA you really don't. I think it's honestly probably pretty tough to like grapple a lot and wrestle if you're like 6'6" and above.
And you're just getting your feet yammed from under you.
Yeah, it's just like how many times are you gonna hit the mat and be okay? How many times are you gonna fall on people and they're okay?
Yeah.
Taking
Motherfucker-
down people way bigger than you, like it's obviously fucking hard when they have like 80 pounds on you or whatever. But B, like if you get your hips under them and like, start working a double leg, it's almost scarier for you because it's like, oh, dude, I might like come up on this double and they land like on my shoulder or something. And
Yeah,
just
that's
fucking blow
the
my
thing.
shit out.
You have to be careful. Like the impact of the collision with with tackles. The collision is usually the impact when you like make connection with them, but with a lot of grappling, the impact is actually the once it's complete rather than when it's initiating. That's like the primary impact.
Right.
And a lot of takedowns, like even if you're successful, let's say you're a little bit tired, and let's say it's like a few minutes into the match, you fatigue a little bit, which you're going to burn through a little bit more gas sometimes when someone's big because you got to use a little bit more effort to make everything work sometimes. You start to fatigue a little bit, and then it's a little bit hard to catch yourself and like brace and all these other things. Like that's where like these little injuries happen, and I've seen it a lot. I've seen jujitsu guys and even sparring matches where like you can control the power and all that. Where I've seen mistakes where someone's like, "Sorry, I was just too accidentally big and fucking hurt this person." It's always like a stand-up wrestling night. You go to like hip throw somebody, and once they're like, you're like, "Yeah, I got it." And if you have good technique, you can throw someone pretty much any size pretty easily. But where sometimes it gets a little funky is like when they're at the crest, the peak of the arc as they're being thrown over you. And as it starts to go over, the roller coaster starts coming down. You're like, well, that's when you decide, am I going to go down with them? Am I going to let them go? Or do you kind of gently like try and brace them a little bit before they hit the mat? And depending on the situation, depending on which one you choose in the moment, dude, you can stumble slightly weird. You make one weird mistake. You're like, I have 290 pounds on my left ankle in a weird position now. And then you're like, shit.
Oh yeah. The last time I didn't get hurt like seriously bad. It was like a slight strain, but yeah, I'm like 210. It's funny you say 290. This guy's probably 290 or 300. He's like one of those deceptively like athletic. Like he's not like just like a ball of blubber. Like he's like pretty
No,
long
he's
in his feet.
muscle, dude. He's like probably 18% body fat or something like that.
Yeah, 18-20%. Put it this way, I've seen him like rep out pull-ups, which is just it's like,
Yeah,
that's not gonna be a fun time to get smushed by. But anyway, I had like the overhook and like one for I don't do the judo knobbery. I don't know what the fuck it's called. I called it a Nuchimata because like jiu-jitsu people call it that, but then like I had a judo guy who's like, actually it's a Soto Garia. I'm like, I don't know, man. I tripped the outside leg from like picture an overhook and not the near side leg. It's like I got my left leg to his left leg and tripped him that way. And it's like because he's so big, like I had to cover more ground to get there. And then also in the back of my mind, because he's so big, it's like, oh, I really gotta send this dude. And like in doing that, like I got the trip, but I like pulled my hip flexor a bit because I just fucking yeeted it so hard.
Yeah. The irony with big guys is like one of the easiest ways to beat them is to put them on their back, but it's also the toughest thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, and like if I can, I'd rather do it from the feet, just because, dude, sweeping someone who has like nearly 100 pounds on you is just fucking brutal.
Oh yeah. And I remember back in the day, bro, people would be like I used to see this a lot in gyms. Like if someone was really big and strong, some jiu-jitsu guys would like pull guard and they're like, I can play my way through this like through guard. But I think back then I don't think that works so well anymore, bro, because back then the people's ability to deal with a lot of jiu-jitsu techniques, there could be greater disparities in skill, especially with like newer guys, especially with a bigger guy that's not that coordinated. Nowadays, people are pretty smart about knowing how to like posture and guard or prevent even getting to guard at passing. Like guard is often not as power. It's not that it's not powerful, but it's not as powerful as it was in like 2010. But nowadays, like it's all about top game.
Especially in MMA, dude.
Yeah, especially in MMA.
But yeah, to a lesser extent in jujitsu itself, I think there's more awareness. Kind of like I'm just not gonna engage your guard.
Yeah,
Like
you
gi
just
is one
avoid.
thing. Yeah, gi is one thing, but in particularly in no gi, like when you don't have grips on the bottom, there's not a whole lot you can do to force them to be like chest to chest in your guard. Like, yeah, you can like basically like grab their wrist or collar tie and whatnot, but those aren't very like durable or perhaps I should say sustainable grips. So if they just don't want to play that game, you don't really have much offense from bottom.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of like the meta has changed. The overall development and every aspect has changed. We have like this is an era where you have like real fighters that are like I've not only trained in everything, but I'm pretty good at everything, and I've been doing it my whole life for the most part.
Yeah, that's definitely. I don't feel comfortable like putting like a specific year on it because it's obviously been a gradual process. But you mentioned it was definitely not the case in 2010. It was maybe like somewhat still the case in like 2015, but yeah, somewhere in the last like I don't know 3 to 5 years is when it's like
Yeah,
okay, like for the most part, if you're like a legitimate contender in the UFC, you don't have any like glaring deficiencies.
exactly. You're not looking at anyone being like they're a striker, and so it's like they can't wrestle like well at all. It's like no, this guy's got fucking tremendous grappling, like at least like general population standard. Versus like
Dude,
everything we saw when we first got into this, which I can't believe is like 15 years ago maybe or longer, but it's like, dude, none of those people could really
yeah, you could just absolutely floor somebody by you are an expert in one domain and they are quite literally a total novice.
which is funny because I remember like in around 2010, like 2008 to 2012, it would always be like you'd hear Joe Rogan's commentary, and he'd be like, back in the 90s, back in the day, it was literally Styles versus Styles. He's like, but now what you're seeing here, and
It's
he's
true mixed
talking about,
martial arts.
yeah, exactly. He's like, this is a true mixed martial artist, and he's talking about like, he's talking about like
Rich
Josh
Franklin.
Koscheck.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and to be fair, like probably realistically, the people he was saying that about is like George St. Pierre. He would always say that about, which is true. Um, but you know, he dropped commentary like that about like even dude. I'm not even positive. I feel like one time he was like really hyping up Dan Hardy, and like part of it is because he's probably supposed to promote the fight or whatever. But it's just it was so funny to just be like, no offense to Dan Hardy, it's just like there was probably no one less deserving of any hype whatsoever in the history of the UFC. No one talks about that, but there was a period where people were hyped up on Dan Hardy and thinking like Dan Hardy's gonna knock out George St. Pierre. And it's like
Yeah.
George St. Pierre with like a major concussion fought him and like made him look like a fucking idiot. He just had this crazy mohawk.
Fraud
Pink,
check.
right?
Yeah, it was like a pink red mohawk. And he had
Yeah,
like
Hitman's right.
he had
That was
like
the
one
ultimate fraud
exchange.
check, dude.
Yeah, such a fraud check, dude. It was literally like this guy does not belong here at all. They did a whole I remember they did a whole I think they did a whole UFC prime time back in the day when they used to do that. 3 episodes just showing the guys, interviewing them, going through the camp process and all that. And it's just one of those things where it's like you look back on it and you're like, all of this, everything that was being said here, the way it's being presented, every single aspect of it on Dan Hardy's part is just clown shit by comparison to how it was presented.
Bro, the
And
most
no
impressive part of
disrespect to Dan Hardy as a person, but it was like
he
ridiculous.
actually seems like a pretty good
I think
dude.
he's
But
actually a pretty chill guy, and he does his job and everything now. And I'm glad the UFC hooked him up with something. But yeah, it was just one of those things where it's like, at one point in time, it's just funny. At one point in time, the world was like, this man might be the welterweight champion, the new like fucking knockout artist dominating the division. That's like
yeah,
how
man, I'd
funny
have
that
to
is
pull it up.
in retrospect.
But I think he was like legitimately only fought cans in
Oh
en
yeah,
route to a title fight.
oh yeah, dude.
Like he wasn't knocking out Koshek or John Fitch or any of those other like title contenders that GSP beat at the time.
He fought I can't remember what it was. I think, dude, I think he fought. Okay, no, I remember this because he's from Boston. He fought Marcus Davis, and they had Marcus Davis is from Boston.
Yeah, bro. All these names he fought: Rory Markham, Marcus Davis, Mike Swick. Who?
Oh, yeah, dude, that's what it is. He fought Mike Swick, and then I remember this so clearly now because I was just getting into the thing. He fought Mike Swick and got a title shot, and everyone was like. And by the way, he on the way up, he like had some close fights. It was like very competitive. Um, but dude, he fought Mike Swick, who is such a name drop. Completely forgot about him. Um,
Right.
and then just got toasted by everyone, by everyone, dude. To be honest, like he just lost. Dude, Anthony Johnson fought him
I was looking at that. Anthony Johnson fought him and won by decision, not punching a hole through his head. So that's a
because
funny one.
yeah, because he was literally, rest in peace to Anthony Johnson, but he was literally probably dehydrating himself more than anyone in the UFC ever.
Didn't well, I think it wasn't until he jumped to whatever Bellator. But I think if you connect UFC and whatever other promotion he jumped to, he's the only fighter ever who won at welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight.
Yeah, yeah, dude. He fought. To be honest, dude, he was a light heavyweight the whole time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. The fact that that guy cut
people
down to
talk about,
170 is
oh,
crazy.
it's crazy that Pereira would cut down to middleweight, and it's like, dude, it's insane that Anthony Johnson was a welterweight contender.
Yeah, he probably walked around like 240.
Dude, literally, bro. I think he probably was cutting like I bet you his. And here's the thing, man. He passed away a couple years ago, kind of suddenly.
You know I'm sad, bro. Not because of a passing or anything. Well, that too. What?
Yeah.
None of these guys back in those days, they never got to make the money they were supposed to make,
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I was.
and that
Yeah,
makes me sad a lot.
exactly
And a
that.
lot of these guys are fucking legends. They didn't make a penny, bro.
Yeah,
Bro, they
and
just
and
had an
they
article on that.
probably they
Dan
probably never
Hardy.
will.
Dan
Yeah.
Hardy himself said it's something like comically low. It's like he got paid 10 grand to show versus GSP title
Oh,
fight.
dude, I remember back in the day seeing the payouts and like, dude, when you first enter, I'm not entirely sure about this for sure, but I actually could be right. I think, dude, it was like UFC debuts at one point, like when it was
Dude,
like a popular thing.
five
It was like
thousand four hundred dollars.
exactly. I was gonna say it was like
Oh my god,
it
bro!
was like it was like 4 or 5 grand to show up, and like if you win, you get 10 grand or something. And it's like, dude, that's
Yo,
literally some people like, dude, some people are making that every month, doing like Excel spreadsheets for a job that's not even real and doing it badly. And like this dude is a professional athlete showing up in the Premier League. And look, I'm not even like shitting like the UFC realistically at the time like probably wasn't making the money to pay people millions of dollars and all that, like obviously. So there's probably at some point there just has to be these guys that go through that to a certain extent. But it does suck when it's like someone today is able to get a great contract and like be the hero, and someone seeing that, some other guy that's like 49 years old is like, damn man, I wish I was 29 right now.
yeah. Like you hear Shane Carwin, like
Yeah.
something ridiculous. Like he like can't do anything. He's like non-functional from CTE.
I've thought about him too, dude, because he was one of the first cards I ever watched. Um, and I wonder sometimes about these names. I'm like, I haven't heard from them in years. I wonder what they're up to. Um, and hearing that is fucking tough. I will say, not to like just to point this out. Oftentimes in these lawsuits, like you're coached to say, like these are the things you got to say for the legal practice and whatever, and it might be to a certain extent there's some distance possibly from reality. Um, but I don't think these fighters are on the lawsuit because nothing's happening. I think that it's tough, dude. Like, and also Shane Carwin, for the record, he, dude, that guy was like, first of all, like destroying people. He was actually sick, but
Oh yeah, he was the man.
he actually took, and dude, he didn't even really fight for very long. Like the he like had a couple UFC fights. I remember he fought like Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar beat him, and then he fought someone else. It was either
That was
Cain Velasquez or Junior Dos
actually
Santos. I think it was Junior Dos Santos was like his comeback thing, and Junior Dos Santos kind of pieced him up, and then he just retired. Like it was it. So the fact that he's struggling after all that is tough. It's tough to hear.
Bro, Daiso Ishige, bro? Is that Dan Ige's Japanese twin?
sure. Why not? Let's run with it.
Cause he fought dude. he, he got beat by your boy Reptile Man. What's his name? Dan Hardy. Daiso Ishige, 2007. Seemed like he only fought like 3 fights though. Bro fought like three fights, lost to Dan Hardy, and then just stopped. He was
I
like,
said
"Yeah,
I'm
just
fucking
dumb
out,
and
bro.
shit, getting paid,
Bro, if
getting
I
paid
lost
$10. Boy got paid $10 to show,
if I
15
lost
to
to Dan
win."
Hardy, I'd stop too.
Guy with the fucking pink red or whatever mohawk.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
You
you double
fucking.
that. That's like Kimbo. You guys remember when Kimbo first lost to that guy? He also had a pink mohawk.
Ah, yeah. Oh man,
That's a tough one. Tough
dude,
one to
that's one of
call.
the only seasons of The Ultimate Fighter that I actually watched start to finish. I think that it might be the only season I watched in full.
Yeah,
The
dude.
Rampage
Honestly,
Jackson,
that was the. I think that was the best season of all time.
because they actually hyped it up. Like,
Dude,
yeah,
like the season. Dude, you put Rampage Jackson on TV and everyone loved it.
yeah, he's a funny retard.
Yeah, he's great.
Bro, you
He's
put
crushing.
any actual raw black guy on TV, and it's just pure, like entertainment.
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hitman's right. It's true, and that's Rampage. He doesn't hold anything
People
back.
just enjoy it because yeah, dude, Rampage. I forgot what it was. I remember seeing one of those things where he did a bunch of shit. He was like humping the fucking reporter, Olivia,
Yeah,
what's her name?
yeah, he's the most
Um,
like unabashedly horny
and
person ever.
they're just like, yo, dude, honestly, like,
Dude, he was
it's
like
kind of
acting like
like
a dog, right? He's
WWE,
like
but it's not
he
scripted.
he was he was like and like starts humping her like oh, I'm gonna get myself a piece of meat, or he says some like
Yeah,
outrageously horny line, starts humping her, and she's just like, oh my god, what is happening?
that guy was made to be on TV, honestly, dude. Like, and I've seen him in interviews now because he's on the Jackson podcast and all that stuff.
Yeah, I
Um,
watched him. He's super chill now.
yeah, he's like kind of mature. Like he's a good guy, dude. He was just wilding. Like he was just you know, like
Bro,
he's
that's
just who he is.
that's what like he's like said some like out of pocket shit, and then my boy Chandler Jones is on there. Rampage, you can tell is just like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like
Yeah.
he's like speechless at multiple points, and I forget what Chandler says when he's like, I'm gonna show you something. I'm gonna show you something. And Rampage just like recognizing like how unhinged and crazy Chandler Jones is. He's just like, all right, dude, you better not be pulling out your dick.
Yeah,
It's
dude.
like this guy's so crazy. He might actually be slapping his dick on the table, and I just don't want to see that.
Because Rampage is still a normal guy and is like relatable.
Yeah,
He's like sane, you know what I'm saying? And then he's like sitting there with Chandler, and he's like, "Uh-oh, this guy." Like when I like to get a little crazy and like joke around. This dude's not joking around. There's something
yeah.
something is amiss.
bro, it's, I remember a few podcasts ago we were talking about like when countries become unpredictable, like people get like
Yeah.
very scared. And you just have a guy next to you, he's just unpredictable. Like you can't guess his next move. That's a problem.
Yeah. It's such a problem when he's like a 6'5"
Yeah,
fucking giga tank.
bro.
You're
Let's
like, oh,
imagine you try to shake a guy's hand and you just don't know what's gonna happen next.
oh yeah, I know. No,
It-
you gotta be clenching your fists and situational awareness, Jocko Willink moment style the whole time.
Yeah, bro.
You know what I
It's that
mean?
kind of shit.
Anytime you're always very aware of where their hands are and where they're moving.
Yeah.
What their
like
eyes
that.
are doing. Like, oh, what's he looking at over there on the ground in the corner?
Yeah.
What's he doing? Like, what's he plotting?
You're choosing all your words so carefully. You're not totally being yourself. You're being
Bro,
who you need. You're being who you need to be.
it's like watching a toddler where you're like
Yeah, a toddler in
have
an
to keep
adult
my eye on
body.
you because I don't know what you're gonna do right now.
Yeah.
bro.
You might get a tattoo of my face on your body tonight and tell me you love me.
Yeah.
That tattoo thing was so funny, bro, because he just had them all speechless because they're like, "Is this a bit?" It's like, "Nope, he has the tattoo. Never met this girl."
Well, and then I think it turned out she doesn't exist either.
I didn't even know that part. That's 10 times funnier. Wait, does she
He's
not exist because she's AI? Because that's the funniest punchline of all time.
I don't think so. I think it was
If it
just,
was, I prefer that story.
but yeah. I think it's like a character or something.
That's
Yeah. And he's just
still
like, oh,
so
this is my
funny.
wife. Yeah, and Rampage and I forget the other host's name. They're both
And
just
it's like Lola Bunny.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, all right, dude, that's kind of weird, but
Hey, dude, I was actually looking this up while we were talking. Just an extra fun fact. Shane Carwin in 2016, he did have one more boxing match, like an exhibition match against a skateboarder. Um,
oh,
Jason Ellis, if you guys remember him. Um, and the deal was Shane Carwin had to fight with one of his arms duct taped to his body, so only could fight him with one arm like tied around his waist or behind his back or whatever. And Shane Carwin just knocked him out in the second round. He's kind of a legend, to be honest.
dude, kind of related to that point. Did you see a couple months ago Eddie Hall did a 2v1 fight against
Oh,
like
I did
twin
see
brothers?
that. I did see
Dude,
that.
the clip is actually hysterical. Because you know they're sort of doing at least like broadly what you should be doing when you're half the size of someone is like taking angles on them. But yeah, one of them, he either like tries to climb on Eddie's back. Either way, he gets too close. Eddie literally tosses him like a dad is tossing their toddler son. Like just fucking
Yeah.
yeets him across the ring, and I think KOs him by throwing him, and then I think he just turns and punches the other one.
I enjoy that because it brings back the circus element of MMA, and MMA used to be more of a circus. Especially Japan loves the circus acts.
Yeah, dude, that's what Pride
And
will
I
forever
just
have a special place in my heart.
yeah, and I to be honest, man, I'm glad it's developed so much, and we'll get to the card here in a sec, but the fights for this weekend. But I am also nostalgic, especially looking back to 15 years ago. Like the you could think of the UFC, things have multiple peaks. They don't necessarily just have one peak. They have a peak in different ways, but one peak for the UFC was the early 2010s. Like we mentioned, it's like people did still have some distinct fighting styles, a little bit rough around the edges. They kind of were blending things, but you still kind of had like a specific background. They had like really cheap walkout tees, custom shorts with like sponsor banners. You have fucking dude wipes on your shorts or whatever the hell. And like, and it was
Bro,
more
dude, the
like, it
sponsors
was
back then were
more
so funny.
exactly, dude. And back then, here's the thing because the talent pool was different, it was like fighters, not athletes. It wasn't athletes who fight. It was like fighters. It was like really raw. It was more raw dog guys that were like, I'm just kind of crazy a little bit. I got into
Oh,
weird martial
I
arts
think
shit. It was so
that
esoteric and
era,
niche back then, dude. If you were
the
into this and you
right before 2010, I think really embodies that because I just think who headlined that era was Chuck Liddell,
yeah,
Keith
dude.
Jardine. Like these guys were like the before UFC existed. Like if they just simply were, alive 20 years earlier than they actually were, they would just be whatever fucking local schmokel town they came from. Be like, oh yeah, you don't mess with Chuck over there.
And, and you
He knocks
didn't.
he knocks out anyone who looks at him the wrong way or slaps
And
the waitress's ass.
yeah, and he fucking did. That's the thing. You know what I
Right?
mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
So
like
it is literally
these
that
guys
guy.
really were like 80s fucking headbangers. Like there are those people that I told you guys that
Yeah,
Randall, Texas
legitimate
Cobb story I
roadhouse
heard a long
shit,
time
dude.
ago.
Sorry.
You guys remember Randall, Texas Cobb? I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that guy was like wild. He's just a fucking random tough guy. Becomes an action movie star because he's just such a fucking roughhouser, man, and like almost wins a boxing world championship. I think he lost to like Larry Holmes or something like that. It's the only guy who was like taking him out. It's like the best guy in the world. He just gets there on like toughness, and everyone was like, dude, you just can't knock this guy out. And he just fucking levels people. He was that guy walking around bars. And there's this old story where someone like, he got into an argument. And I used to not believe this, but now that I've met more people, bro, I believe there's some truth to these things. The story is someone grabbed like a bat waited for him out in the parking lot, and they're like, Randall's big, so I'm just gonna smash his head with the fucking bat. They go out in the parking lot, the guy jumps him, hits him in the head with the bat, and it doesn't work. And then Randall Texas Cobb just knocks this dude the fuck out. And I'm sure he fucking whacked him, and it was like, oof, like there's a little bit of violence and like a realistic scuffle, but it's like now I look at it, I'm like, dude, there are some of those people are just walking around. And a lot of those guys were like, yeah, I'm gonna do some cage fighting because it was just fucking that's what that shit was back then. Mike Goldberg,
Oh hell
another
yeah!
thing I'm super nostalgic for, man. Like I loved that era. But, that led to this. So we're at the best spot. And that speaking of that, I think a good segue is like now what we have today is like another peak form of MMA, the UFC. I am legitimately stoked for this card. And I talk about when I don't love the card. I love this card.
We want to touch on the Ferreira Ngannou
Yeah, let's
first
go over
before we get into it.
the details of that because we just kind of glossed over it.
Well, it's only
Um,
like 2 minutes, so
I mean, there's not much to. I think
There's a
what it
couple
really
things
highlight.
worthwhile to mention.
I mean, I think the main highlight is that one, the UFC is a higher league. Like Francis did step down to a lower league, but he was doing the same thing to the people in the UFC. So it's hard to say, really. Hard to say. People in the UFC were getting messed up and yammed just like this guy got. So like it's hard to say like, oh, is
the
it
most
because
we
this
could
guy's
say
lower
about
skill or what?
the most we could say about Ferreira though is he is legitimately way bigger than Ngannou, and at least that in itself was a novel challenge.
Yeah, you finally get to see someone that he doesn't have. I mean, to be fair, we saw that a little bit with Anthony Joshua too, where he's at a size disadvantage. And to be fair, he's size disadvantaged in a certain sense with Tyson Fury, although Tyson Fury is just like a big fat guy now, more so than usual.
Bo-
But
Body like a bag of milk.
yeah, literally, dude, the guy's not keeping it clean. But this is in an MMA context. We hadn't seen that before.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. One thing I realize that sometimes is when people are like, "Oh, this guy's way bigger than you. This guy's way bigger than you." I think there's a level of strength that you have where it doesn't matter. There's a certain range that you have. I don't think with Ngannou's strength, I don't think that there's gonna be a guy big enough for him to not be able to to not be strong enough to handle him. I think you pass that.
Yeah, he's past the threshold. There's no people he'll ever fight where it's like he's
He
under
doesn't have the
physically
strength.
qualified. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I feel that now with grappling, like even if I grapple a guy that's like 220 pounds or whatever, 230, I can still handle him just fine. Um, I think maybe if you get to like 250 plus, then I'll probably won't be able to. But now it just seems
Yeah.
like it's fine. Like I still have the strength. Like I can still put him on the ground. Um, so like there is a range that you have with your strength. Um, well, but if you get as big as Ngannou, yeah, I don't think so. Like it really didn't matter that Ferrer was bigger than him. That it just
yeah, like to talk about Francis getting like completely outmatched in like a physical strength sense, like we're talking legitimate like world's strongest man again, like him grappling at fucking Eddie Hall, like that level of like elite top 0.001% strength in the world. That's the type of strength you would need to like create a legitimate disparity between Francis and so
even that's an issue, I think, because it's not just it's not like a arm wrestling or whatever, like or pushing just or a tug of war or whatever. It's like, can you stop him from applying his strength on you? Uh, I don't think there's a human on Earth that could just do that. I don't think. I think you've just passed that point. What is Francis like? What 280? Walks around like 280? Yeah, I think you're way past the point where there's somebody that could really stop you from doing what you're trying to do, just strength based only, and not technique.
Yeah, I mean, I'll qualify that by saying this is extremely theoretical because, like, we're at least all relatively speaking normally statured people. Like, I don't really know what happens when you get up to fucking like Eddie Hall and Thor when they were competing world's strongest man. They were over 400 pounds. Like,
yeah, but
Yeah.
I guess there's gonna be a difference between that's like a difference between like you having strength versus you being able to stop Ngannou from doing something to you. I think
yeah, I mean, we gotta give respect, because in Ngannou's come up, it was all like, oh, this guy's just such a freak and just punches a hole through a brick wall. But part of, at least for me, the flowers I want to give him is like he's become a true mixed martial artist, not just all right, time to punchy time, and I punch you first and I punch you harder and you go night night. Like he's evolved so much beyond that, where he won this fight with wrestling. He backs Ferreira up, gets in on his hips, dumps him, and then just has heavy hips on Ferreira's back, doesn't let him, work a guard and stuff, and just punches him in the head. Fight over. Like, it was like, I think I sent it to you guys. I was like, oh, what is this? Francis Ngannou or something? It was like a heavyweight Habib style of a win. So back to the like strength thing, it's like, yeah, I think Francis is skilled enough that you couldn't just outmuscle him like as a literal like day zero white belt, whatever you want to call it. Like there's no amount of strength that's just strength that could dominate Francis. That's how I'm going to. I'm not putting words in your mouth, Hitman, but that's like my view of it. Is like there's no one who's so strong that they could have day zero and dominate him.
Yeah, unless like we've created some like superhuman, some Spartans from Halo or something like that.
I was just gonna say a Halo Spartan, not an old school Spartan. We're talking.
A Spartan from Halo or something. Unless you just created superhumans like that or whatever, genetically modified. Like, I think like with the current humans on Earth, I think it's safe to say like you're gonna have to out technique this guy. Like you're just gonna out muscle him. I don't think that exists.
Yeah, bro. That said, speaking of like the whole like circus appeal of like old pride fights, I'd fucking sign me up for that, bro. Like throw fucking Eddie Hall or Thor versus Ngannou. Do a grappling match, doing a striking only match. I don't care. I want to see it. I want to see Francis, the hardest punching man on earth, go up against world's strongest man, Thor or whatever. Fuck it.
I think if you put Ngannou versus 100, like little Asians in a cage in pride, 100 little Japanese guys versus one Ngannou. How many of these guys? How many of these guys just get knocked?
Dude, this is one of my favorite. Oh my god,
Bob, bro.
That's my favorite hypotheticals. I think it's so fucking funny. I mean, the only yeah, go ahead, Hybrid. Take a crack at it.
I got nothing.
What? Ngannou versus 100 little age.
Hybrid just doesn't want to get canceled.
How many of them get bopped, bro?
Honestly, all right. How big are they?
Like, let's say a bunch of 5'1" Japanese guys.
No, but
5'1".
How old? Like roughly?
Just like middle-aged guys.
middle-aged Asian 5'1" guys. How well trained are they specifically?
Just like straight off the open market, like,
Right off the market, like these
straight off
guys
the
sell fish.
streets, straight off the streets of Tokyo.
Yeah, okay, dude. I think he takes all 100 of them because here's the thing. I've thought about
That's
this.
such a funny thought.
No, but I've thought about this, bro. It's not that crazy for him to take out almost all of them because
I mean, dude, it becomes a question of fatigue. Like,
Yeah,
does he fatigue
yeah,
out?
because here's what happens though. It's basically like, can he throw 200 or to 400 punches? Because like
You
people
don't think they could
people have
get
to
Bro, I
realize,
think it's
bro.
100 to 200 punches. I don't think it's 3 to 4 per.
I've gotten in fights and like play fights. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With people that are like vastly physically outmatched. Like I've done things where I've helped out with youth wrestling, and like all the kids, whatever, are like, oh yeah, let's like all attack the coach or whatever. And I'm like, just helping out, whatever. But we're playing around. But these are 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, some 14-year-olds, and then there's me. And I'm like, in some sense, that's Ngannou versus a bunch of 45-year-old guys who sell oranges and fish outside. You know what I mean? Probably smoke cigarettes and get drunk all the time. Like, what happens? People get surprised, and these are kids that are like wrestling. They have a little bit of confidence. You know what I mean? They're athletic. It's all young, aggressive boys, and they're excited. And you know what happened when they all attacked me? Is one by one, I grab them and I throw them like paper. And that's why it's funny to them, right? Because they're like, oh, it's crazy. And they're all hesitating. So there's a bunch of them around me. Like, I'm surrounded, make no mistake. But I really am like, you are the hero that's like surrounded by a bunch of like level 1 or 2, like, opponents, where you can kind of just mop them with one shot. It is like that. Sometimes, because they're all hesitating. If they all coordinated and attacked him the right way, yeah, they'd get him. But dude, a bunch of those guys, they're just gonna stand and be frozen, have no idea what to do. They really will come at him little. And if he gets aggressive, dude, there's a chance a lot of them are gonna start running away.
Bro,
Like,
he
realistically,
can
dude.
pick one up and just use them as a weapon.
Yeah, dude. And also on top of
Start
that,
swinging them around.
I'm like not even kidding, dude. Also on top of that, let's say he takes out the first 20 that come at him. The rest of them, no one else is coming.
Bro, how
You
this
see
question
one
came up?
guy get uppercutted and actually fly into the air doing backflips,
Bro,
and then
and gets
they land like a catapult,
gets decapitated.
like ammo lands on the ground. Yeah, he has no head. His whole fucking, all his teeth are just like flying through, sprinkling through the air, and they just all look at that and they're like, oh no.
All right,
Like, it's
we gotta
over.
motivate them. If you are one of the guys who survives and defeats Francis Ngannou, you get $1 million.
Dude, it'd have to be like Squid Games, bro. It'd be me and you in pink outfits with like MP5s behind them. They're like, go.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. You get shot and you will die, or
yeah.
your option.
Attack
That's your
Francis.
only other option.
Attack Francis, I shoot you right now.
Bro, you know how
Oh
this
my God.
question came up? It was on my Discord. Some of these guys were fooling. They're like, if you're in India in one of those open air markets, how many of those guys you could knock out?
Bro, might have to go test it one of these days.
I thought
Science.
you were saying the question was specifically about Ngannou, and I'm like, oh, that's funny, but it's like way funnier that it has nothing to do with Ngannou. It's some other guy that's in India going, damn, I can beat the fuck out of all these guys.
It's on my Discord, bro. He's like, damn, how many of these guys you think you could knock out? And it was somebody said, "Shit, at least a good 20 of them." Bro,
Oh, that's too good.
I think, I think it could be really bad for these guys. But I think maybe somebody might come like hit you with a bat or something. Hit you with like a piece of
A smart
plywood
guy
or
would grab something that would fucking really injure you. A 2x4 with a nail in it.
Yeah,
But then
sneak
you
up.
wonder for selfishness, how many of them would just back away? Like I'm not gonna do anything.
Well, that's what I was saying, dude. I think a bunch of them would. A bunch of them would.
Or even
All you gotta
you
do
gotta think how
also in
many
those
guys if
situations,
they
you
can
gotta
like
find two brave guys and you gotta delete them fast so that it really demoralizes the others.
you gotta think, like if I'm a
You
five
like
foot
you were
one,
already on the fence. This guy who kind of had a little gusto, you're already on the fence. Look at him. He has no chin anymore.
Bruh,
It's gone.
this conversation can only be had with men that are filled with
Oh.
testosterone. No one else would understand this conversation.
Oh no, bro. Imagine just talking about this with your mom.
Yeah, like how many of them you could just knock out?
She would just be like, "All right."
Dude, this be the sort of thing if my mom overheard me and a friend
Oh,
talking
man.
about in our basement growing up, I probably would have been checked into a psych ward. Like,
Yeah, like,
hi, my son, yeah, last night he was
like
talking about how many little people he could murder.
yeah. It's like, God damn it, I raised a weird kid. But the
Mom, you don't
reality is, you
understand.
actually raised. And the funny thing is a lot of girls might not always know. It's like actually, you raised a perfectly normal boy.
Yeah, this is called being
Bro,
a red-blooded
you know
man.
what a girl told me? Was it yeah, this week. Hanging out with this girl or whatever. And she told me, I went out with a date. I went out on a date with a guy earlier or whatever. I guess maybe she's checking for a reaction from me. I'm like, oh, whatever. Um, and then she was like, I didn't really like him. I was like, oh, well, why? And then she was like, oh, well, it seemed like he's a little bit emotional or whatever. I'm like, what? He was like, yeah, he was fine at the end, but he said he was fine at the beginning, but at the end, I don't know. I don't know. I guess he kind of got. I guess he's a little bit emotional. I guess he reacted to something she did or said. I think that was the thing. And then she was just like, "Oh, she got the ick, bro." And then she
Yeah,
told me, "You're
I
not
would
like
too.
that. You don't really like react to the things I do." And I'm like, "Oh shit, the bar is so low, bro."
Yeah, if you can just not cry on a date, then you're good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
don't be creepy and don't be gay.
and I think she's one of those women that she'll like just poke you and test you. I think maybe he reacted to it.
I think that's fun personally,
Yeah,
but
no, I
yeah,
think it's fine. But I think if you don't know what it is and you're
yeah. Some guys just don't know how to handle it.
Somehow
I
the like simplest like the simplest like reduction of like, oh, what is good game is like don't take women seriously. Like
Dude, to be honest, I think a
just
lot
don't
of
take them
dating.
seriously, and like if you want to like that's like level one, and then like beyond that is like be like witty and playful with it. Like, oh, you're so silly. Like when they're like trying to act like pouty or like get a big reaction out of you, and you're just like, haha, good one.
I think a
And
lot
then
of organic dating is just having fun, and you can't really have fun if you're getting wrapped up in everything.
yeah, she was like, I don't know how to explain it. You're just manly. I'm like, bro, we're cooked, bro. The bar is so low, bro.
It's like, what did I do? It would have been funny if what you were talking about with her was just like breaking down MMA fights and talking about how many banana salesmen in Sri Lanka you could beat up.
You could fucking whop.
Yeah. Um, do you guys want to move on and start covering the actual fights here?
Oh yeah, let's do that, bro.
Should we start with Khamzat and Whitaker, and then we'll do Holloway Taporia to finish off?
Yes, we should.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to start with Khamzat
let it rip.
and Whitaker. Okay, so brief overview. I think personally, bro, like the the fulcrum that the whole thing rests on is, can Whitaker do anything?
Survive.
Yeah, can Whitaker do anything to stop the momentum of getting pushed to the fence and grind it out? Because Khamzat does the same thing in every fight. He just drives you to the fence, and he just grinds you out against it until he chokes you out. Like it's basically that's what he does. He is the
It's like a
most
human
confidence I've
buzzsaw.
ever seen. Yeah, he has the most confidence I've ever seen in doing that, more than even Khabib. I think Khabib
Habib at least sort of hesitated until he
he
Twice the
was
conceded.
strike.
trying to pressure you, but there was
Oh, no,
still a respectful pressure. Like
yeah,
Khamzat doesn't even have that.
yeah, he has zero
He's
respect.
treating you like you're like he's like a grown man, and you're like the 14-year-old youth wrestler that he's coaching.
Yeah, like you're like a like you're a fucking banana salesman.
Yeah. Yeah, he's literally treating you like this is not your job and you don't belong here.
Yeah.
And it works. And we all saw that footage of him wrestling up against the wall too, with what's his name? Forgive me, I forgot his name. But
Luke Rockhold, that one.
no. Oh yeah, Luke Rock. Oh, I forgot about that one. Also, Luke Rockhold and winning, which is no joke because Rockhold actually, in my opinion, was ultimately his forte. Actually, was jiu-jitsu more than anything else. Even though he relied on striking strategically in his career. I think where he was the most lethal was on the ground. But what was his name? The wrestler, a really high level wrestler.
Oh, I don't know his actual fucking name, but yeah, he
I
just
can't
won
remember the name.
Olympic gold at 74 kilos.
Yeah, forgive us for not remembering your name, brother. But yeah, dude, he's giving this guy the work and like competing with him on this and getting and gaining positive positions. Like
Yeah, so
he's not all
Hamzat's
hype. Like
bigger.
Kamzat's not all hype.
Hamzat's bigger, but I'm talking like it'd be like the equivalent of like a weight class bigger, right? Like so 74 kilos, what is that, like 165 pounds or something roughly? Um Hamzat used to fight at 170. He could barely make the weight. But point being, it's not like he was like going against a 125er. He's going against a guy who's like about a weight class or maybe even only half a weight class below him
Their
and like
their
natural body
their
type.
their frames are comparable enough that the difference was Kamzat is very capable, not that he was just too large for him to handle. You know what I'm saying? Like the and you could tell from the movements too because the way like if you actually look at the exchanges, it's like Kamzat has so much pressure on weak points on his body the whole time. He and the other guy's doing great stuff too, but it's like if you I watched the sequences like 20 times and it's like you just notice all these little things Kamzat does so quickly, so smoothly, so intuitively that you're like, this is why people have such a hard time because so many seamless things are happening. And if he's able to do this with a guy who is wrestling, it's like, dude, makes sense why he's just
He
smashing
has,
people who are technically
he's
not
so
wrestling specialists.
he's so crazy natural. Like his I say this a lot when I'm coaching people. It's like, yeah, key to like finding this move is really the sensitivity. Like you can't just like brute force this sweep or whatever. You have to feel when you get their weight a certain way, you get that reaction. Like that's when you have to go. But you can't think like in execute, like getting good at the technique is not akin to like, oh, I got their hips up and squarely above my hips, so now I do the butterfly sweep. Like no, you train yourself to feel it and then it just happens. With Hamzat, he is so comprehensive with his body awareness, that like sensitivity training, so to speak, where he's just like a machine. Every exchange, every little micro transitional moment, he's just always a beat ahead. Pair that with like his tenacity and just insane work rate. So it's like he's willing to like redline himself and like push as hard and as fast as he can, knowing that he could also, like his brain and his like kinesthetic IQ, if you want to call it that, is also a faster operating machine than you. So both body and mind, I guess you could say. And it's just like he's just making that wager. It's like, I'm just going to beat you one by one by one by one by one, and then I'm just going to get on your back and choke you. The end.
Bro,
That's how he approaches a fight.
I like a lot of what you said, or both of you guys said. Hamzat is like, you see this guy, and you're like, this guy, he's talking trash, whatever. He's kind of saying stupid stuff, and you're like, man, this guy's an idiot. And then you see his grappling, you're like, what is that? Like, they're so opposed. His personality, and then you look at his grappling, and then you see like the genius in it, and you're like, what is this, right? It's crazy. And yeah, like you said, his grappling, like it's off. He's just flowing, like he's just flying. Like it's insane. Like when you get so good at grappling that you can make it so that you're on the ground, but it's look like you're flying. You're like, whoa, what is happening?
Dude, was it I think it was Gilbert. Gilbert had like a couple moments. Gilbert's a fucking world champion jiu-jitsu guy himself.
Yeah.
Gilbert has a few moments where it's like he has like a 95% sweep, like perfect setup, like caught Hamzat like transitionally, like at the perfect time where his hips were like not heavy and like moving and therefore vulnerable. So it's like against probably any other person on the roster, Gilbert Burns sweeps them, and then Hamzat's like, oh nope, I feel what you're doing, and now I'm going to sink my hips or go the other direction with them so you can't execute that sweep. And it's like, it happens in quite literally a fraction of a second. But it's just such an expression of his grappling prowess.
I've said before that what my personal theory on a lot of this, it's not really a theory, it's a model where I've just a trend I've noticed. But with myself, there's different types of athletes. We've talked about this. Certain things just make sense to people. For some people, sitting on a soccer field, kicking the ball and finding out where to move and how to get the ball to the net and put it in the net, it just makes a lot of sense to some people naturally. So they can build off of that. They have an intuitive sense of how to do that. Wrestling's different. There's different sensory things involved. It's more than just like knowing how to float your own body. It's floating your own body around the mat in relation to someone else's weight and frame and positioning, and being able to sense exactly where they are and where they're moving and how fast and how hard you need to do everything, because not everything's 100% either. There's like a calibration to stuff athletically, and like being able to dance around that. um for me personally, like that was something I was good at naturally. I wasn't good at striking naturally. Striking was actually awkward for me to start, which is why I put more effort into it. I was a natural grappler, like feeling things out with like contact, sustained contact. For whatever reason, this was just something I understood. When I was at wrestling practice, like you show me a move, I'm doing it on people in practice really well day one. I wasn't like that when I first started boxing. I did start boxing really, really young, but like it just wasn't quite the same for me. It took me longer to get good at these things, like actually in practice and sparring and stuff. I think Khamzat just has that times 1,000, and and so that's his tool. But there are, and I'll throw this out there, there are intricacies of the things he chooses to do that, like anyone, there are decisions he makes or stylistic habits he has that can be exploited. One of them is that he honestly, when he shoots, he falls to his knees a lot. I've noticed, like, he usually doesn't shoot and just take you right down. It's not like a George St. Pierre shot, shoots and he was standing the whole time and just brings you to the floor. It's usually the chain that Hitman always talks about, but it's a chain where like he'll shoot, he has your legs, he's kind of face first on the mat. And traditionally in wrestling, at least in the US, people always like to say keep driving on your shots. Never let your shoelaces face the mat is a big thing people always say. Khamzat doesn't do that. Khamzat will shoot. This is more Eastern Bloc, but they'll
Yeah,
shoot.
he just wants to get connected to you and then
Yeah,
says,
and
I'll
he's
find the
actually
takedown from
okay with,
there.
exactly. He's kind of okay with the position of like, okay, you're sprawled on me. I'm on my knees,
Yeah,
hands
he
wrapped
literally
around
takes it
thigh.
in a
We're now, he treats that like a position itself. It's not a transition for him. It's a position.
yeah. Well, like you said, especially with like the American perception of that is like, and I would argue broadly, it is an objectively bad position, but he's so good at doesn't matter. Like you said, the
Yeah.
Eastern mentality is a little bit more comfortable with the like, oh, like I'll just flow through this and find a way. So like obviously that's present with how he approaches grappling. But even so, there's probably not a coach in the world, certainly in like the MMA sphere, who'd be like, yeah, just take any shot, just take a shot.
Yeah.
So he's breaking like rule number one from that perspective, and it quite literally to date hasn't mattered.
Let me just say this real quick. Yeah, how I like to explain that is everything works in the hands of a professional. That's how I like to put it.
Yeah, because yeah, that's true. That's good. Like they know enough about this to say, I know how to apply these tools properly to get the job done.
Yeah,
You're
you
giving
see this a
someone a set of
lot.
tools. They
You see
understand it.
this a lot when people talk about, oh, this gun is better. This knife is better than, oh, why would you use this gun? It's like, bro, listen. In the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it would be like taking a pro fighter and saying, let's put these constraints on you or make you fight with this style. It's like it's no longer a question of like what style is best per se. It's like they just know how to apply all these moves and styles to get the job done. They're an expert in the craft itself. They're not an expert in that move.
Yeah.
That's really what like a professional really is in a lot of senses. So yeah, I like that. What I was gonna say though is one like one part of the puzzle I've noticed with Kamzat is he has the same pattern. He shoots and he often will miss a shot and then he'll go to body locks. And he'll go to body locks and kind of trip and bring you down. And then again, unlike jujitsu guys, he's looking for wrestling moves, not jujitsu positions. So he starts looking for hooks from the top position, even if you're there. He's doing wrestling rides, and he also often likes you to be up against the fence because the way he shoots, where he's prone to getting into that turtle position, you're not going to be able to sprawl on him on the fence. He's going to be able to just ride up and body lock you, and then press you up against the fence, get the ride position, and punch you. Um, so because of that, the way you could break potentially this cycle is if Whitaker is able to put a threat in his face so that he slightly hesitates because he is hittable, and then B has the footwork to stay off the fence. The real problem is that that's so hard to do because Kamzat does not even have a mildly chill pace. He is like bull rushed right at you, and I don't
He
know if
comes at you with complete reckless abandon.
yeah, and I don't know if Whitaker has something that can actually make him say that's a move that's not available on the chessboard for me. Whitaker has a good, powerful jab that he's known for, but I do not think that jab is enough to truly stop Kamzat, and I also think Kamzat will be very prepared for that because that's a Whitaker staple. Everyone knows he's going to do that.
Also, the way like I love Whitaker. So I'm saying that before I'm sort of writing a bit of a death sentence for him, but I think the way he approaches striking is not very conducive to a guy like Hamzat, who, again, because his grappling is of the mentality of I just need to get my hands on you and then I'll figure out the rest from there. His whole like in and out thing, like even which I don't think Hamzat will, but even if he does ever so briefly pause, and I mean like a couple seconds to start the fight, whereas every other fight I could think of prior, he literally sprints at the bell and just engages with you immediately. So let's say there's just a pregnant pause. The pregnant pause is probably just timing Whitaker's cadence of like the bouncing in and out. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's about to bounce in and do that lancing jab that is like it's actually I would argue it's the pillar of Whitaker's entire game is the in and out karate, and then jab, 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 high kick. That is 90% of his offense in the octagon, right? I think Khamzat, if he doesn't just simply sprint at him and try to engage in a takedown, I think it's just wait. Okay, go. Boom. Duck under the jab. Okay. Oh, he sprawled me. Oh, doesn't matter. I'm going to turn the corner, come up on a body lock or rear body lock, and just drag him to the mat.
But my thing is, Whitaker has so long to prepare for this fight because this fight had got canceled before. So there was such a lead time between when he was thinking about fighting Chimaev versus the actual fight.
Yeah, and then he got to fight Khamzat light pretty much, and he fucked him.
So I don't what
Good point.
I don't know. Like you have when you have so much time to think and you had so much time to strategize. You even went through a training camp and then the fight fell through, and now you're going through a second training camp for that same guy. I wonder how many things you figured out and how many
Yeah, it's a
things
good point.
you practice
So, like,
switching up.
back to like we're putting a lot of emphasis on like how Khamzat starts, and I think rightfully so. You got to be thinking Rob spent like and his team has spent a whole hell of a lot of time of like
Probably more than a year, probably.
yeah, and I think specifically breaking down like okay, how does Khamzat start and how do we neutralize that?
Yeah.
Like how do we not play into his game?
Exactly. So sometimes I get very skeptical. That's gonna be the question mark. Can Robert Whitaker post like did he have something up his sleeve? Because he's not a dumb guy. Like he fought Izzy the first time. Izzy KO'd him second round. The second fight he fought Izzy. Izzy didn't knock him out. It was a decision.
Yeah, and I think Whitaker won 2 rounds. Right?
So the guy does know how to, improve and fix holes.
Do you guys have
No,
any
I
thoughts
think
on how he could neutralize or at least minimize the round 1 Khamzat freight train?
that's exactly what I was just gonna what I was just gonna ask, because
It's tough.
there's different things you can do in theory, but there's also things that in practice Whitaker could do. And that narrows it down to a few things.
Yeah.
Assuming he doesn't have some, like, I'm gonna, you assume Whitaker doesn't have these like grandiose new techniques and meta skills. I think he's going to represent his traditional skill set that he's built his career off of to some extent. And it really is distance and a jabbing blitz. Like, he has built so much of his career off that. And sometimes it isn't the right guy that you're matched up with where it's going to work, like with Izzy. And to be fair, a lot of the things that I think, kind of like how we were talking about Ngannou just being big and strong enough that he pretty much, there's no one he's going to fight where he's not going to have the strength to get the job done.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like when it comes to striking, Whitaker, Khamzat is just durable, capable, and like relentless enough with the offense and capable with it that there's really no strikes that Whitaker is going to have that's going to make Khamzat back off and say, I got to be careful. Like, there are people in the world that probably have that, but I don't think, as much as I love Whitaker, I don't think Whitaker has that knockout power and that threat behind it to do that. He'll work on you and beat you up, but his KOs come from high kicks. And he needs a little bit of time to make that happen and find those
Yeah,
shots.
'cause
He's
the
not going
head
to have
kick
that at
is set
all.
up.
So Whitaker's striking potency and his primary threat, the thing that makes him dangerous, I I think Khamzat neutralizes that, and it kind of makes Whitaker a major underdog in that sense, because it now reduces his threat level to Khamzat. But Khamzat's threat level is not reduced. That's why that's a big problem, I think, for Whitaker. I will say, on top of all this, like, you could say good things about Whitaker's position. Like, he's actually He's actually pretty good at wall walking and getting up from the cage in various ways that might actually be applicable to Khamzat's positions that he prefers. But these are all things where it's like, oh, what are areas that Whitaker could have some defensive potential success with Khamzat versus I'm looking at it and I'm like, these are all these major ways Khamzat severely deteriorates Whitaker's offensive potency. And so it's a very tough situation for Whitaker, in my opinion. I don't doubt that he has some capability at being potent there. He could pull off an upset, but I think he is the underdog for a rightful reason. So I don't have a clear answer on that. I think his best shot is he has to be hopeful that he like. Here's the thing. Forgive me for ranting on this, but like, let's say Whitaker even lands a head kick early on. He might toss one up there to gain some respect. Who knows? Especially if you're like, hey, bro, there's a good chance I'm going to end up grappling most of this round. If we're going to start off, I'm going to open with some high kicks real quick, just for the fucking value, because who knows what's going to happen. Um, like if he, I don't think he'll flatline Khamzat, and I think Khamzat will be ready for that, and Khamzat might dump him on his ass. But like, that's the thing. Even if he lands it, I don't think he'll like necessarily finish and win the fight because of it. So I kind of think it's Khamzat's fight to lose.
Yeah. And the thing about Hamza too, people forget is he has legit KO power and has taken a few people out.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's not a slouch on the feet at all.
yeah. So
If anything,
yeah,
he's
his
hittable,
striking,
but he's potent himself. So
yeah, his striking might be a little bit sloppy, but he has taken people out. Like on the first punch. Like what was that guy? Mirror Shark or
Mirror
whatever?
Shark, dude. Yeah, that was like
Bro,
a
bro,
circus KO.
bro. That fight was funny because that Mirror dude was talking so much shit before the fight. And bro, as soon as they closed the cage, bro was scared, bro. Bro, you can see the
Oh
fear in
yeah,
that man's eye, bro. And he got
yeah
KO'd on the first punch, bro.
that was a man trapped in a cage with a lion.
Yeah, it was fucking crazy.
He
Bro,
got
he
he got
ran his
fucking
mouth
eaten.
so much, bro.
Yeah, he said he
But
was gonna sub Hamzat, I think.
something crazy. I'm just like, I'm gonna eat you, brother. I'm a roof, brother. You a dog. I was like, what?
I will say if Whitaker is able to survive and stay conditioned into slightly later rounds, and this is a 5-rounder, right?
I have
Hmm.
no idea.
We should know that.
God damn it! I hate that
It
this
has to
is
be a 5-rounder because it's a co-main. That's why I assumed.
You would think. They
we've
never make it
seen.
obvious in these little things. Like,
I know they
you have
make
They
to
it
like
don't.
look
They
for
don't.
fucking
I'm
it.
looking at
obvious.
it now, and I'm like, I'm surprised they don't mention it. But yeah, it doesn't even mention. That's crazy.
But either way, bro, I think Whitaker still
It
has to
should be a
survive.
5-round fight. It's the co-main event. Um,
Whitaker still has to survive the first round, and I'm very unclear how he does that.
yeah, and what I was gonna say is it's unclear how he does that, and I think also the second round's still applicable there. Once they get to the third, I do
He has
think
a
there's
chance, bro.
potential if Whitaker is able to find a way to make that happen. I do think there's possibility there suddenly for him to be able to work in certain things. That's when he can start to like a lot of the potency behind Kamzat will diminish a little bit.
Oh, I mean, dude, he's a
Then he might be able to work in
fundamentally
some combinations.
yeah. Well, Hamzat's a fundamentally different fighter. I'm gonna I'm gonna say roughly halfway through the second round. We've
Yeah,
actually on this podcast we've analogized him where he's like essentially the striking version of, or excuse me, he's the grappling version of what Connor was to
yeah,
striking in his prime, where Connor through 1.5 rounds at his peak was the most dangerous striker in the roster. Like all he needs is to connect and set up that rear cross one time and it's lights out. Same thing with Hamza with his grappling. It's like he just needs to get his fucking hands on you, drag you to the mat, and you are going to be put through abject suffering.
Yeah,
Now, the 2 times guys notably weathered that storm and got past it, Burns and Usman, they pretty much in both cases, they got in some like, fucking deep waters again in that first like round and a half ish range. But after that, the tide pretty rapidly shifted. Not saying Khamzat like got like
It's hard
trounced.
to compare though, because those two guys you're talking about are very accomplished grapplers, and they almost didn't make it out.
Yeah. Well, dude, you could tell
Even more so with Usman.
Usman he had what I think took him on a week, and he said himself is like, oh man, I've been fighting like 5-round fights for like 5 years straight. Like you come out more mindful of your gas tank, like so I wasn't ready for that. And it was clear, like he was just trying to like chill, not chill, but like flow through the grappling, and it was just like, oh fuck, this guy is putting the fucking work on me. But yeah, he survived by the skin of his teeth.
Yeah, so that first round, even when you're an accomplished grappler, is not easy. But
So
Whitaker, I don't think has that grappling pedigree. I mean, he can grapple, but he's no, we don't call him a grappler.
Yeah, it'll be. Okay, it's like a cliche statement at this point, but it's like, what happens? Like, do we get to the end of round 1? Is like the biggest if then of this fight in my mind. Like, if Whitaker survives round 1, then it becomes anybody's fight for the remaining round.
If he survives round 1 without gassing,
that too.
because if they're both gassed, then it's a fucking toss. It's a fucking toss. Yeah,
I mean,
so
that's
you have to
kind of
figure
how
out how to
most
do
of
two
his
things.
fights
You have to
look.
survive, and you have to conserve energy. This is a tall task here.
For sure. I mean, I do like, okay, if we were to, for some reason, make them fight kickboxing or whatever, like, I do think Whitaker has the edge in a purely striking sense. But as I agree with everything Hybrid said before, where like, yeah, he like has good timing, he's pretty crisp, and he has a lethal head kick, but he's not the guy who just comes out and sparks you in the first engage. He's not. No one is confusing him for like a Pereira, right, or anything close to that, where it's just, oh, he just finds that hook one time and boink, good night. He's not like that. He's setups, he's in and out, frustrates you with his space and timing, jab, 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 and then when you're thinking jab and another jab, boom, he head kicks you. So he doesn't have that offensive potency to change the dynamic of an MMA fight with Khamzat. Now, survives that first round where Khamzat, he's no longer doing the reckless abandon, like I'm sprinting at you at the bell and I just need to get my hands on you and I'm going to blitz through you. That's where Whitaker can open up a little bit. But can he get there?
As we've gone over it, the problem is I don't think we have an answer for how he can reliably do that. We're gonna have to figure out if he found a way.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to find out if we've underestimated or overestimated any aspects of them. But the way the math adds up from a tactical standpoint here, I don't think he has the specific techniques ready and potent enough to make Khamzat back off just enough for him to get his combinations. Because here's the path to victory. How's Whitaker going to win? He needs some space to work, let his combinations rip, and then feed into one of his high kicks. That's it. That's how he wins fights. Every time. How is he supposed to do? There's a lot going on there that he needs to do against Khamzat. Khamzat's kind of like the worst matchup for him. Izzy's a better matchup for Whitaker. I think Whitaker would have an easier time rematching Izzy. Because at least he can play his own game a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think he can fight his game at all. No one can against Khamzat.
Yeah, man, it's hard, man. Unless it's like Khabib versus Hamza, and then it's just gonna be like a fucking
two
battle of the
Rams smashing heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at it this way. It's probably I think my last thing to say on this. Whitaker obviously has something. He has some game plan, some wrinkle that he's going in with. This is how I will slow him down. This is how I will control the distance and keep it on the feet. He has. I mean, it would be gross negligence to not. So he has a game plan. The question is, does that game plan actually work when the bullets are live against Khamzat?
Here's how Whitaker can reliably win. Reliably so.
Bring it
Hamzat
down.
got really sick before the last fight. If that sickness took a lot out of him, and he's not the same Hamzat we know, then yes. But if it's the same Hamzat we know, healthy, man, Whitaker's in for a.
Yeah, so if Whitaker gets circumstantially, if we're at the point now where we're wondering if maybe circumstantially Whitaker has a small advantage, then I think we're given a decent favoritism towards Khamzat.
Yeah, 100%.
All right,
I'm gonna go out and I'm
official
gonna give
picks list?
Khamzat a solid 60% win rate.
Yeah,
I might be comfortable going higher than that too, but I think a responsible estimate is 60%.
Yeah, I'll give him a 70,
oh,
and
I
then
like
a
it.
30% chance Whitaker makes it out the first round, and a 30% chance that Hamzat is sick. Like if the sickness took a lot out of him and he's not that healthy anymore. 30% chance of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because Khamzat's the one that had to pull out of these fights.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's going on with him. So that's fair. The reason why I'm giving the extra 10% to Whitaker is I think those are fair contributors as well, but part of it also for me is I could see Whitaker being able to like not get finished. I could see him losing the first 2 rounds, but still like potentially surviving them. Because even Usman was able to do that. He
Usman's
had
a
a lot of trouble.
wrestler.
I know he is, but it's like it's possible that Whitaker, who's not really that big either, by the way, at middleweight, but it's possible Whitaker could find a strategy, the way they've been, to stall out a little bit, just to get through 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, I think he will be able to work in some more combinations. And that's where he has a chance. So I'm giving a solid 60. I'm comfortable going up to 70%, but I'm going to be a little more conservative and give a 60% chance. Low 60s for Khamzat.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right the range where I feel comfortable as well. I legitimately was thinking 65. So yeah, there we go. I'm right down the middle from you guys.
Yeah, it works. It's I don't know, man. There's just so much fog. It's just gonna all depend on if Whitaker figured something out that we couldn't. I mean, which he can, because it's his body. He knows what maybe he can do, and we don't fully know like what he's learned and what he put in his arsenal. So it remains to be seen. Question mark.
Yeah,
Big
can
question
you
mark.
guys imagine if he brings out the Jorge Masvidal? It's just like
Oh yeah,
goes
just
flying
flies.
switch knee into like, yeah, all right, ready, go, bang. Just fucking massacres Hamzat and
I mean,
that'd be-
in these UFC fights, the underdogs have been winning lately. It's underdog season lately, but crazy.
yeah, dude. Again, I've been most famously wrong when I've been most confident.
Oh yeah,
Like 90,
I think this year in
95+%.
particular. this year in particular has made me and all of us, I think everyone in the world to an extent, a little bit more hesitant when we get real confident with these highly competitive matchups. MMA is at a point now where I think everyone's good enough that even at the highest level fights, like a lot of people, you'd be surprised how much of a chance they had. Even people are like, yeah, Khalil got beat up by Pereira, but it's like he also did so much better than so many people thought.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, include
Right.
us
I think he
included. We said,
exposed Pereira.
It's
yeah,
one of
like
those things where I think even when someone is an underdog, it's like I'm less likely to count out any underdog that's in the top 5.
I think he made Pereira like, hey, bro, if you didn't have that knockout power, you wouldn't win any fights. I think
Yeah,
that's what he said. That was his statement.
yeah, that's
So,
true.
so yeah, we'll leave it at that. Like he's like, bro, you're not that good at fighting. You just good at. I think that was his statement on the
yeah,
whole thing.
Pereira, you're an assassin, not a fighter.
Yeah. All right, and let's roll up to the main event. Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway. How
Oh
we feeling
baby,
about this one?
dude,
Ooh, look
I'm
at those
super high.
fights.
I'm well. I think we already said this card's fantastic, top to bottom. But this might be this matchup in particular might be the most excited I've been about a headliner in the last few pay-per-views, honestly. And one, all jokes aside, they're both excellent fighters. But there's a lot of, so to use Hitman's comment and all metaphor on here, Taporia climbs his mountain, right? Which that being taking out Volk and being the first man to KO him. So he climbed the mountain, but there's still questions about the his game as a whole. So Max, who's only lost to Volk, I think his last non-Volk loss was like fucking Connor or Dustin Poirier like 13 years ago or something stupid like that. So other than losing decision chess matches versus Volk himself, the guy has not lost. And they're both brilliant strikers, but they could not be more stylistically different with how they strike. We have Taporia, who's his game is, not to like reduce it too much, but it's like very violent inside boxing, and by that I mean a lot of like really like body rotational hooks. He has like good footwork and pivots, etc. Where Max is, I mean, they're billing these guys at Taporia 5'7", Max at 5'11". Dude, I feel like so in other words, that's only 4 inches. I feel like it's at least 5, if not 6 inch gap between these two. Max is tall as fuck.
They have him at the same reach though.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Maybe they do have the same reach, but Max fights long. More to the point, very good in and out. Not like the Whitaker, which is a very like linear back and forth in and out footwork. He actually almost looks like yeah, like he's pirouetting around his opponents. He looks like Lomachenko or something, like what he is to boxing, Holloway feels to MMA, where he just has such a natural gauge of distance. He knows when he's in trouble and when to just roll with the punch or slip or just get out of range, whatever. And then he knows when he has you in danger and when to start piling it on. He's also fundamentally a volume striker. Tutaporia is Honestly, at featherweight, I can't think of anyone who's been able to spark people like Topuria. Connor years ago, I guess, is the only other one. Honest to God, wasn't Aldo as great as Aldo was? He was never like the punch you once good in the first round and put you out. Volk certainly wasn't either, and not Holloway. Those are the goats of featherweight. So basically, Conor McGregor 10 years ago and Topuria today are the two best featherweight knockout artists of all time.
Um, you guys ever watched the movie No Country for Old Men?
Fantastic movie, yes.
You seen that movie, Hybrid?
Yeah, of course.
Um, in that movie, the old men in that movie, it was the cop and then I think the retired. It was the sheriff and then the retired sheriff, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think the argument with the movie was like they just couldn't comprehend that kind of evil, something like that. I think that was the point of the movie or something like that. Um,
Yeah, Javier
what if
Bardem's character, the hitman with the fucking cattle prod.
yeah, I think what if this is just No Country for Old Men we're watching, and Ilia is just here to he's just taking out the trash, huh? What if?
Forcibly changing the guard. I
Because
mean,
here's how this fight can go. It could be like a 5 round war, back and forth or whatever, or it could just be a
Ilya
straight
sparks
KO,
him.
and then we're like, oh, what the hell were we thinking?
Well, I'll be honest, man. I think it could be that. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely think, and everyone will say Max has never been knocked out, and it's like, cool, whatever. I don't give a fuck about that. I think if Taporia lands really clean on his jaw, he's gonna be very hurt. And I also think personally that Taporia will hit Max. Um,
Ooh.
all right. So honestly, here's one thing with Taporia. I don't think he's overhyped. Um, but we've technically dude, this guy's actually struggled. This guy's actually had some moments where he was getting boxed up
Bryce
by
Mitchell.
Bryce Mitchell, and
That was an interesting one. If you, assuming you at least watched a clip, if not read a little bit what Jack Slack was saying, but like his whole point was as much as Taporia just fucking has mowed pretty much everyone down that he's fought, including Volk. Um, he's not nearly, like, not even close to as comfortable pairing up against a southpaw.
yeah, and what I was gonna say is I think. Well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that more in a moment. But I think one of Max's biggest benefits here is
That he can
being
switch.
comfortable. Yeah, being comfortable in a lot of different positions. I don't think. Okay, so what Taporia is really good at is he's genuinely good at classical boxing. These are things I like about Taporia too. He does a lot of things that I was taught growing up from, my school of thought and things I appreciated and preach to people to this day with my own biases perhaps. So he's good at a lot of things that I've wanted to, be good at myself and worked on. So he's kind of a confirming fighter to me that I'm like, these things are good, these things can be effective, these things are legitimate. But I also know from personal experience, having some stylistic similarities with his stance and things of that nature, that and the way that he throws punches too. He has the part of the reason he hits well is he has great hands because he shifts his weight in his punches so well. He has a great he has a great right hand because he is able to keep his weight shifted onto his back foot effectively. This also makes his jab nice because he can kind of step forward with that jab while keeping his weight over his back leg a little bit, and he gets good reach on the jab, and his rear hand's cocked back, and he can hide behind his shoulder well, and he shoulder rolls well from that position too. It's very classical boxing that's been around for a long time that a lot of MMA fighters don't really do, and certainly don't do well. So to see Taporia doing that, it's great. The downside, sometimes the dynamic MMA striking that we've seen for the last 10 years, um, I hate it when people used to call it like neo striking when like TJ Dillashaw first came on the scene and all that. But there's something to it where sometimes people that do know how to strike well for MMA, that classic MMA unique style, it's a little bit floaty. Sometimes that gives you problems because those people know how to exploit the specific stance related disadvantages you give yourself in that stance, which sometimes can be struggling with checking kicks. And it sometimes can be that you struggle with kicking in general, to be honest. Like, kicks in general seem to chew up that stance a little bit. And if you can get
Taporia
it,
is absolutely vulnerable to kicks.
yeah, and if you put people in that position and you get into southpaw matchups where you can play the lead hand, stuff punches, and remain distant from the rear hand, I do think that is unlike what we were just talking about with Whitaker and Khamzat. I personally am struggling at the moment to think of clear cut for sure ways that Whitaker can shut down a lot of Khamzat's primary tools. I'm not. I have a lot more concrete ideas about how Max can do that to Taporia, and I do think lead hand play, kicking the outside of the lead leg, and constantly just
From
jabbing at that
southpaw.
thing. Yeah, constantly jabbing at that thing, picking at it, not letting him get set in his stance, making him move laterally a lot, and one thing would be key to make all this happen is Max needs to not try and be a tough guy at any point and get comfortable with his chin, because I think part of the reason why Max has sometimes been comfortable with volume punching is because he does feel like, you know what, I'm okay with eating some shots because I know I can take it. I think he has gotten a little bit reliant on that. I don't think he can do that here at all. And some people might argue like, hey, he got hit by Gagey and didn't get KO'd, like he'll probably be fine. That might be true. Like, to be honest, like I don't know, but
Gage was never a one shot KO guy though.
yeah, Gagey, he hits fucking hard. But the thing is, I think the thing with Taporia is he does crack you right where he needs to hit you. I think that's really where the magic is.
Yeah, he's
He's
hitting
kind
it
of a
right.
mini Pereira from that perspective. Like he
Yeah,
just finds that fucking, like he stalks and just finds his kill shot.
it's that right hand, and he's corked and ready to throw it. Like Pereira stands in kind of a square stance. You know what I mean? It's this tall, squared stance, but that squared stance means he's always positioned in such a way where he can kind of mechanically torque a lot of
Yeah, uncork
force.
that lead left hook.
Yeah, yeah, and he doesn't have as much pop on the backhand usually, unless he adjusts his position different.
That's the trade off of that, of the two
Opposite with
stands.
Taporia, right? Total opposite. He's so prepared to jab and throw the right hand, which is why there's kind of like an opportunity for Max to pick away at him a little bit. And who knows, Taporia might I think Taporia can adjust and be aware of those things. But Taporia is similar to Kamzat from a striking perspective, where he wins fights by backing up into the fence and then throwing combinations and knocking you out with his right hand.
He's so
McGregor used to
lethal when
do
he
this
traps
with the
you
left hand.
against.
He would back
Yes,
you up to the cage and then left hand you.
it's funny. The like, because their like stance and like body movements are pretty drastically different. It's, you wouldn't on the surface say Taporia and McGregor are similar strikers, but strategically what they're doing where they try to corner you in the cage and funnel you into, oh, I'm, shaded to your right, so you have to evade to your left. That's kind. I'm dumbing it down a bit, but that's kind of what Taporia did to Volk. Like, he trapped him
Yes.
against the cage where he only had one exit path, and he forced him into that exit path and then just uncorked his right hand.
Yeah, and McGregor would famously funnel you in. He would give you the dilemma where it's like you either exit flat against the cage and I'll snipe this long left hand. So when from southpaw, you can actually reach across yourself a little bit. The punch is slower and it is longer, which is normally risky. But because you have to punch so much further away and reach a little bit to land. But he's throwing that and splitting the guard when someone's not in a position to hit you with any power at all because their heels and ass are backed up against the fence and kind of running away. So he get away with it and snipe you, or you run back at him and try to blitz him, and he'll usually step back and counter. And he was always positioned and ready to do that. And that was kind of people's dilemma with him, and he'd get the KOs. The way Taporia does it is instead of throwing those big high amplitude kicks to get you to run away and back up to the fence and then KO you with a counter like that, he slowly inches you to the fence little by little, and then once he's there, he
Yeah, he
doesn't
walks you
corral.
down more.
Yeah, he doesn't corral you with these big kicks like McGregor did. He corrals you with the body hooks. And the thing about hitting the body and throwing low kicks, people don't think about this enough. It's worth mentioning it in terms of ring craft. If you, I think we've talked about this in the podcast prior, but famously, do you guys remember the first Stipe versus Ngannou fight in Boston?
Oh yeah.
And Stipe has this moment where he gets backed up to the fence and he's got his ass on the fence. That's a moment where everyone's thinking, "Uh-oh, everyone in the building knows not a good position for Stipe to be in. Like something could happen here if Ngannou just whips a limb at him." And Ngannou, being undeveloped at the time in 2018, just whips these haymakers at his head, and Stipe ducks and rolls both of them and then slips out to the side and exits back to the cage like a matador. And everyone applauds. Everyone in the building was like, so, like, oh, well done. It was very clear in that moment that Ngannou skill wise was not up to snuff with Stipe. But in that moment, if instead Ngannou threw something to the body, even if Stipe blocked it, you can't duck and roll out. You still have to stop in position because there's a limb blocking you. People did this back in the day with a lot of fights where they'd corral you in boxing by throwing hooks to the body as you try to circle out, and people would block them. But the fact is, they had to
But
block them, which
yeah,
means they had to
blocking
stop moving.
you. Yep.
Yeah, so now you stop moving, and that's all it was there for. And now I got you up against the cage, and now I can throw the headshots.
A quick
So
shout out on
Taporia,
that, but think about how Pereira just finished Khalil.
yeah,
He,
yeah,
he was stalking and headhunting and piecing him up, and then finally he kind of felt like a cat playing with his food, like he was just having a little fun with it.
yeah,
But then when he wanted the kill, he cornered him, touched him high, like literally like touched him, didn't like uncork, like touched him high, like almost like a tapping jab, and then bang bang, one like 2-3 to the right to the abdomen, folds him over, and then comes over top and crushes him.
yeah. The body work I think is really underrated. I honestly personally think, this is a side note, I think body work with the hands is going to become more popular in MMA in the next few years. I think that's kind of a meta that has potential to grow. Don't know for sure, but
Taporia is certainly
is
spearheading that.
contributing to that for sure. Yeah,
Dude,
I think
Izzy
people would
put
do that.
in beautiful body hook, rear hooks to the body on Dreykus, and
Dude, so glad
Dreykus
you said that because
just retarded his way
I
through it.
think it's subtly coming up with the high level guys right now. And next year, I think suddenly it'll start to trickle down to lots of guys, and that's where the meta will grow. Um, and then someone will kill it, just like Jose Aldo started to kill the calf kick a little bit. But That's something I think will happen. But the goal here, I think, with Holloway is I think Toporia's path to victory is to do what he always does, but Holloway's path to victory is I think he needs to shut down the lead hand and stay distant from the rear hand, and then be unwilling to engage in any fair exchange with Topuria at all. No trading whatsoever. Every single exchange needs to be like, I'm going to hit you and you're not going to come near me. And
I will
a
say
lot of Max's
Max has
fanciest positions
excellent.
are like head movement and all that, but he can't make any mistakes. So he also has to humble himself a minute here.
He did say he's the
Yeah,
best boxer in the UFC. Well, if I'm Ilia, I would play with his head. I'd be like, well, you said you're the
Yeah,
best boxer in the
exactly.
UFC. Let's box then. Let's box
he
then.
he kind of did say that.
Yeah.
And
Should
well,
I like?
Ilya,
Yeah.
I think Ilya was, to be honest, I think Ilya was already planting that seed in his head, saying maybe I'll point at the ground. Like that was something where he's like, hey, I think consciously he knows this is something playing with Max's masculinity
Yep.
is an area of advantage here because Max is like, I'm the BMF guy. I'm the fucking toughest dude. I've never been knocked. And it's like, imagine if Topuria does stand in the middle of the cage, points to the ground, and Max backs up.
Ooh.
Like, you know what I mean? It honestly is no big deal,
It's
technically.
no big
Like,
deal, but hey,
but
it's
it
not gonna play
feels
well
like
in
it
the
is.
media.
Yeah, it feels like it is. And there will be just this element of acceptance where it's like, yeah, you know what? When Topuria did say that you wouldn't want to do that, you didn't. And like that kind of eats at you a little bit, and it takes your head out of the game. Like it takes your head out of a flow state because you're thinking about what people are thinking of you, and you're gonna second guess yourself. You're gonna say, "Fuck it, man. Do I really want to be known this way, or do I want to like maybe
Right.
you know who I know who I
Yeah.
am. Like I'm this
It's
guy. I
bro.
can just and you're making split second decisions in this fight where one shot changes everything. Those things throw you up. So I do think that Taporia has a little bit of a mind game advantage potential there, just
Yeah.
because of
If
the
he
absurd
yeah,
power he has.
if he knows to do that at like a crucial moment, just disrupt everything, bro.
He's
That
claiming he's going to do it at the bell.
nah, you don't do it at the bell because you have to save it just in case this fight is turning into a war that you just do not want, and you're like, well, fuck it, let's let's bring it here to where I can kind of close the show and not have to go through like a fucking 5 round slug match.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
third
that's the
round.
thing too.
It's getting grimy, and
Yeah.
yeah, you bait Max. Like, all right, you're feeling yourself. Go ahead,
Well, you never been knocked out
stand
before,
up.
so you should be good. Right, right.
Here's the other thing too. One thing we have seen with Taporia is he can come back and get the job done after getting close to getting finished. That's also happened with him.
I wanted to say that in contrast to Hamzat, where Hamzat is so predicated on just mauling you and just finishing you in round one. Uh, I think Taporia has excellent conditioning, and even let's just say Max actually is winning the exchanges and is winning on the scorecards through the first couple rounds, or like is winning the majority of the scorecards the first couple rounds. All it takes is one time where he gets trapped, and I think Taporia can absolutely be the first one to put him out. Like, as in,
Yeah.
it could be the fourth round, and it could be like, oh, it's looking like Max is up 2-1. Like, does Taporia got it? I don't think he's the type of guy that'll be like, I don't think he's like Connor in that regard. I don't think he'll just like diminish in gas tank and potency. I mean, obviously, everyone, like, you're not as fresh and snappy, strong, explosive, etc. 20 minutes into a fight, but the degree at which I expect Taporia to fall off, I don't think it'll be anywhere near as dramatic as a Connor from the striking perspective, or how Hamzat literally just fights differently because he can't redline for 25 minutes straight.
Here's the other side of this. Max has one of the best teams in MMA. And if anyone has a plan, it's going to be them. 2, Max is one of the most malleable strikers in MMA. If anyone
Oh,
can
bro,
mold themselves, if anyone can
the guy
mold,
evolves.
yeah, if anyone can mold themselves into somebody that can beat Taporia, it's Max. So we have 2 things pulling at each other here.
I mean, these are all we're like hitting on all the specific points, but this is why I'm so excited about this fight, man. Like things like there's so many like unstoppable force meets an immovable object sort of dilemmas here. Like one being because we haven't seen obviously Volk, but prior to Volk, we really haven't seen Taporia like how he handles the other contenders within featherweight. So what does his skills and potency look like against Max Holloway, just in general? But then things like again, Taporia wants to march you down with his boxing and trap you against the cage, and then he snipes you with his right hand. Max has some of the best like ring awareness and ring craft in the game, dude. He pretty much never gets trapped. I mean, I'm racking my brain. It's obviously like happened like in moments over the course of the guy's thousands of hours of fighting or minutes of fighting at this point, but he's not an easy guy to just win the footwork battle and trap.
Max
In
is
fact,
also
God,
Max is also a guy that can stay disciplined throughout all 5 rounds and
excellent point.
execute a game plan for the whole 5 rounds.
He doesn't lose focus is a
Yeah.
great point. I mean, dude, like when you go back and watch the Max Volk trilogy, which dude, these fucking guys fought for an hour and a half, a fucking feature film length amount of fighting between these 2 guys. Um, they're both adjusting and then adjusting to each other's adjustments, like
Yeah.
between fights and then between rounds and fights, dude.
Yeah.
Like I think it's
those guys.
like the second fight, like Max fought. I mean, they both fought like quite differently in each fight itself, but I think it's like in the second fight. I think in like the second round or something like that. Like Max fights the whole round in southpaw and has like an excellent round, or if not the whole round, like the majority of the round or something in southpaw. But anyway, that's directly relevant to what Hybrid brought up before, where as potent and competent, etc., as Taporia is, he's pretty awkward dealing with that open stance when it's southpaw, and he does not switch stances. So by going southpaw, you're forcing him to not be his fullest expression of how he wants to be. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Max at least starts the fight in southpaw, just to do a little bit of that fucking with Taporia. Like, okay, what can you do? I've seen you look like shit against southpaws. What are you gonna do?
Man, I think Max is gonna have a great game plan. I think that's 100% guaranteed. He's gonna have a great game plan. Now this is gonna be I know he's gonna execute the game plan. Now, whether that's enough to stop him from getting KO'd, I don't know. Because the KO thing is such a
Yeah, I get that's the fundamental difference then is as good as Max is, he doesn't have the put your lights out power and never did, and he's not even close. He's a volume striker and he can put people out, but it's because he's just punched you in the head 200 times
yeah.
and you're tired and he's not. Taporia can be losing deep into this fight, and he just needs to find one good counter or one good moment where he caught Max slipping up. Oop, and you're trapped. Now's my moment. As he said against Volk, Volk won the first round. They had some good exchange. Like they both had good moments in the first round, but Volk won the first round. And then round 2, Taporia finds his moment, traps him against the cage. Good night. That's all it took. That's all she wrote.
Yeah. Like they're gonna have to, take some power away from this guy. Like, hey, bro, you can't punch that hard anymore. Yeah, so there's gonna be two things for me here. So that being said, I'm gonna give Ilia 55% chance of winning. The extra 5%
Oh
is
man.
that knockout power. And yep, that's how what
I was also thinking 55 to Poria.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. I think it's a really close fight with a lot of different ways that things could show up and each guy could win. But yeah, I think just like with Kamzat, the edge goes to the person who has the initiative. Like, whoever's wielding the stick that everything has to kind of move around. When you have insane knockout power or a knockout threat, most of the fight has to revolve around that now. Usually. It's usually one of those things where it's like everyone now has to kind of move around this elephant in the room. And I think it's a strategic advantage, even if you don't get the KO. Like
unless
it
you're
makes
fighting
the
Aspinall, and then you're fucked in always.
yeah, sure. The thing is though that it's like the thing is though that it's like even if you don't that person doesn't get the KO, the fight revolved around the other person having being forced to greatly respect this KO power you have. So strategically all these things were downstream of it. So for that reason, slight edge to Taporia, but I think Max can totally pull this one off, dude. He just needs to do it right. He needs to do it right.
Yeah, I think like this fight could easily be like Ilya just fucking um for 4 minutes something or whatever into the or 3 minutes something into the first round, KOs Max, and then that was all she wrote, and we were like, man, what the fuck were we talking about with all this stuff?
I mean, that doesn't
But
make us wrong. I think there's a
No,
lot of
it won't make
outcomes
us
there.
wrong. I'm just saying like
well, it's one of
everybody's
those
sentiment.
things where you feel and don't get me wrong, that is possible.
Oh, 100%. There's a huge chance that happens.
Yeah.
Or another thing that can happen is Max can eat one or two of those punches, and then Ilya goes, "What the hell?" It doesn't work on him, and then it becomes, and then Max just clean sweeps every round.
There's a possibility. Like let's say they get into a couple exchanges and Max feels Taporia's power and does know he can get a little bit comfortable with it.
Yep.
Let's just say that happens. And Taporia starts being like, "Oh, I connected. Oh, I feel like if I just hit him one more time, if I feel like if I just hit him one more time, gets a little sloppy and starts eating some shots himself." We don't know how he'll react to that. You might see Taporia get a little bit overzealous, and who knows? I don't think that he will. I think he's pretty disciplined as well.
Because
But
Max is one of those guys. He snowballs.
yeah, he has it. Max has this ability to gain momentum, and he
Yeah.
gains momentum fast. And I don't know how we've seen Taporia come back from the brink of destruction, but it's a little bit different when it's like he's hurt and then he's finding a way to scramble back to the win and get the KO. It's different when it's like,
Max drowns you.
yeah, you're like, I'm getting beat up. I'm getting beat up. He's in the matrix. He's
Yeah.
like he's just sniping me. Like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah,
Like
like Kakashi
that's
said, you
tough.
got punched in the head 200 times. You're like, what the
Yeah, you're like, I don't even know where I am.
fuck?
And dude, I mean, my earlier comment about like, yeah, obviously, like everyone gets more tired as the fight goes on. If there's one person who like is least affected by that, it's probably Max Holloway. Like, if you were to like chart his like output, however you want to gauge that, and like strikes thrown or like total like ground covered in the octagon or whatever, Max is like one of the freaks who probably like most guys probably do the most in round one and then a little less round two, and then somewhere usually drops off pretty big in like round three or into the championship rounds. Even like a strong Sean Strickland, who's like considered a very good cardio base, like late in those rounds against Strikers, he was not nearly as fresh as he was those first couple rounds. Max, though, like his chart of like output, again, however you want to define that, he probably does his most output in those like rounds 3 to 5. That's how he fights, which maps directly on what you just said, where he's like a snowballer. Like he gets he's always active. It's not to say he's like a slow starter or inactive, but he's more focused on getting his reads, being a little patient, sticking you. And then like once he gets his reads, and certainly if he knows you're tired or if he knows you're hurt, he just fucking pours it on and drowns you from a striking perspective. So anyway, this fight can go a lot of ways. If I were to pick like what's the most likely general flow of it, I think it's a war. I think both guys go out there and have their moments. And I think it goes, I hope it goes to round 3 or longer. But
I mean,
you guys already mentioned, Topuria could spark him in fucking 2 minutes, or Max can just have a masterclass and just dance on him and TKO him in
The thing is, I
fifth
think
round.
the two most likely outcomes are around 2 or 3 Topuria finish. Even if Max is doing really well throughout the whole thing, or Max remains doing well for 5 rounds and wins the decision.
Yeah, I think a
Another thing
decision's
to note is
actually
I actually
pretty
think
on the
Max.
table here.
Everyone's talking about how Max put on a great performance against Gagey, but one thing to note is like Max gained some weight, was bigger. I don't know if the weight cut's tougher for him now. Could be. He got a little bit bigger for lightweight. He's got to cut more weight to make it to featherweight. A little more dehydrated. He always
He looked good, dude. I don't know if you saw it. He looked good. He looked full in the photo shoot yesterday or whatever.
Oh, okay, maybe that's the case. I saw another photo of him that he looked pretty emaciated, but I was gonna say he always looks that way, to be honest, at featherweight. So it's not unusual. But it's just something to note because sometimes these little things play a big role where like inches matter in a championship fight. But I don't. I think it'd be sick if we saw a max KO. Like it would just be like so cool for him this year. But I'm leaning towards around 2 or 3.
Then we get
KO.
Max Volk 4. How crazy would that be?
Yeah, absurd.
But yeah, all that to say,
Max KO would be insane. That would be
Dude,
insane. He would
almost-
just be a god.
oh yeah.
He's just a god now.
Well, think what that does for his resume too. Like again, the biggest mark on his resume, like the negative mark on his resume, is the fact that he's 0-3 against Volk. But then if he goes out and
one of
kills
the
the guy that
greatest
kills Volk,
strikers. It's not that big of a mark.
it's not that big of a mark, generally speaking. But when you're talking like Mount Rushmore, GOAT of featherweight, like you can't.
It cements him up there because it doesn't make him feel like he's totally second fiddle to Volk.
Exactly.
Yeah, he beat the guy Volk couldn't beat.
Yeah.
So the biggest mark against him on his resume then all of a sudden has this interesting asterisk to it. Is like, well, he lost some very close, hard-fought wars, 3 5-round wars versus Volk, but the guy that killed Volk, he killed him. That makes like the legacy conversation around featherweight really fascinating.
Yeah, it makes it ambiguous.
Which this sport is to some extent. Sports in general, I guess.
But if you go out
part of
there
the
and
fun.
get fucking
Particular.
sparked, it's not ambiguous anymore, bro.
Yeah.
You go out there and fucking get slumped, but you out here looking like one of those
Yeah.
banana merchants. But
Yeah, literally.
You can't be a fucking New Delhi banana merchant.
bro,
Yeah.
Can't do that to us, man.
Guys selling the iPhone cases at the mall.
with the iPhone case. The chargers. He
Yeah.
got those chargers that work for like 2 days.
Yeah.
He's selling.
The fucking kiosk guy who runs after you if you dare look in his general direction.
Please, please.
My friend.
So, what phone you have? Go away, dude.
Is
But yeah,
that a pod, bro?
I think that's a pod.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. It was fun. And we'll talk to you next week about the results of this. Should be a fun card. Enjoy it.